Last week, my video was a plea to Raila Odinga and William Ruto to put country first and to sit down and save this country from what is certainly going to be anarchy and ultimately the destruction of the country as we know it. There have been signs that these two are about to sit, if not that they are already talking in some way. That's very encouraging as Kenyans. In fact, there has been so much speculation about these talks that we were surprised when both sides began behaving in a manner to be seen to be running in the different direction. But talks we must have. And the talks, it appears, we are going to have. However, there are two problems. The first problem I've already alluded to. It pains me to see that the people who are supposed to be talking are not creating the atmosphere for talking. It pains me to listen to the president talking about finishing BBI, stopping reggae, and therefore he will have no problem stopping maandamano. Other than the legal complications that we thought the courts had in their wisdom, using their training and experience, given a proper opinion on BBI, the president seems to suggest that he had a hand in the final delivery from the courts. That aside, those pronouncements don't create the environment for talks. This is made worse by hardline stand from those around the president. That we understand, and we talked about it. There are people who know if the president goes into talks, they stand to lose big. Those we must ignore in the interest of country. But there's also a problem from the Azimio side. Much as the prayers, Requiem Mass was necessary, but the signal that we received from such, with Uhuru Kenyatta in attendance, didn't, in my opinion, appear to be what you need to create the environment for talks. As I do this video now, we even don't know what will happen tomorrow when the Azimio team issues a statement on maandamano. Although we've already been told that the struggle continues. If the struggle continues means maandamano, then the environment I'm talking about is being polluted. An environment that should be conducive for the talks. Which talks, I want to repeat, fellow countrymen, are unnecessary if we want to keep this country. I want to repeat again. Countries that have gone down have gone down for much less. Some of the countries that have gone down, the issues that have brought them down are much less than the issues we face today. Granted, our issues are also not as big as those issues faced by certain countries in the world. But the point is, we face issues big enough to destroy this country. And the destiny of this country is in the hands of William Samoei Ruto and Raila Odinga. And that's why we have been urging them, a whole lot of us, from the international community, the clergy, and people like us, the business people, and so on and so forth, to save the country. Let's look at the second problem, which is, in fact, a much bigger problem. Because the first problem is normal. When people want to sit down and talk, there are always side issues, side shows. People raising all manner of small little issues to stand in the way of talks. That's normal. We will deal with that. But the second issue is a bigger issue. The second issue is reduced to one question. Talks about what? There is a worrying number of Kenyans who argue that there is no basis for talks. They argue that Raila and Ruto sitting down will not reduce the price of unga. They argue, just like the other lot has been arguing, that maandamano will not bring down the cost of living. That argument is shallow. It is even annoying. Not just disturbing, but annoying. Actually, it becomes tragic when I get that kind of reasoning from men I respect, men of serious intellectual capacity and training. A professor friend of mine, a Pan-Africanist, known across the globe, asks why Raila should look for a mediator when we have institutions in this country. I want to inform the professor that he knows power is negotiated. Power is negotiated right from preliminaries, the nomination states, whether it's in America or Kenya. You negotiate with the membership of the party to nominate you. Once you get that nomination, you negotiate with the electorate under universal suffrage, or whatever suffrage you use in your country. But even after getting power, in some countries, jurisdictions such as ours, the loser can go to the Supreme Court. And you still negotiate within the Supreme Court. And now the law professor would know that after the Supreme Court has rendered its verdict, the legal avenue is closed. The president is sworn in. The constitutional dictates and demands are met. And the president takes the Bible or the Quran, depending on what book they use, or none of those. If he's a Quaker, would put the hand up. But the good law professor would also know that that negotiation that I'm talking about can go beyond the confines of law. When people have tried to negotiate within the established structures and institutions, and that fails, people negotiate even in the streets. Our jurisdiction is even better because it provides for it, that the people may fall back on Article 1 of their Constitution, where people are the sovereign, are the power, and they donate. I had some semi-literate person saying they exercise directly through voting and so on and so forth. But that is already provided for. When you have an either-or situation, the either has already been provided through elected representatives. You can't go on that route as you look for direct, which is the or side, or do it directly. Directly cannot be on the either side. Either directly is the people, or those provisions of their elected representatives. And stuff like public participation may be a very narrow interpretation of direct. So that is what it is. That you can negotiate beyond the confines of the legal structures and provisions. And that brings me to the main issue. Talks about what? The beginning point is that ceasefire is never for decoration. Ceasefire is to save a situation. We are in a situation in this country where you may wake up tomorrow and find you don't have a country. We've been at peace and lived with peace, surrounded by neighbors who have gone through hell. We have come to think we are special. That the things happening in other countries cannot happen here. That's the sort of slumber we are in. And that's why people can ask such a useless questions as talks about what? You can wake up tomorrow and you don't have a country. And therefore, the main reason why Raila and Ruto should talk is to put an end to situations that can burn the country. In what is called ceasefire. Other things can be dealt with, but only after ceasefire. We must stop moving so close to the petrol tanker with our lighters and cigarettes. We must stop dancing around an overturned petrol tanker with the jerrycans to get petrol. And yet some of us are smoking in the streets, lighting cigarettes in the streets. We have turned the country into one major flashpoint. We polarize the country. It requires only a spark to lose this country. So if the talks between Raila and Ruto can save us from this situation, so that we don't have people in the streets, we don't move closer to destroying our country, we don't move closer to anarchy, honestly, I'll give my life for that. I'll give my life that my children and their children can find a country that is peaceful. And yet we have people asking, what will the talks be about? Now, to answer them, if the ceasefire is not enough, even the things you are talking about may be achieved through talks. Sometimes the president even needs an excuse. Let's give examples. Supposing the president has allowed GMO because of pressure from some country or some countries, and he can't face them, and Kenyans demonstrated. During negotiations, he can tell his backers, the country will go up in flames. Allow me to withdraw this. It happens all the time across the world, even big countries. They look for excuses. Supposing the president cannot institute subsidies to bring down hunger, subsidies to bring down electricity, subsidies to bring down diesel and petrol. Supposing he cannot tamper with the VAT to bring down cost of diesel and petrol because of IMF and World Bank. Supposing he's forced into it through these demonstrations and negotiations on the table, don't you think the prices will go down? So I invite my fellow countrymen to look at the bottom line. The bottom line is peace. The bottom line is peace. You need peace. And there are certain small little things, just like IBC, just like elections, small little things that can burn the country. When Kenyans sit together, they can sort out this small mess and avoid the anarchy we are heading into. But there is also the bigger picture, that these talks will be the beginning, will be the first step. I am sure, no, Ruto and Raila may not even like it, but I'm sure we may need bigger talks after this. So this will be the first step. The bigger talks are what I've called national conversation. This country will need to have a conversation around the political question. Why are we still a poor, dirty third world country with the resources we have, from human to natural resources? Why are we still a poor, dirty third world country? Because we haven't gotten our politics right. We will need to sit down as a long-term measure to establish a national charter that will ensure our elections, our politics are clean, elections are clean, the winner smiles, the loser greets him and concedes and goes home. We have to address that political question. Once we get it right, we will realize our potential as a country. Kenya cannot be keeping company of poor countries because they don't have what we have. Today we run the risk, the danger, the humiliation of being overtaken by small countries. Already Ethiopia, recently from mess, has overtaken us. Tanzania doesn't have long to overtake us. Rwanda has overtaken us in certain aspects. Imagine the shame, the national shame of us queuing behind Tanzania, Somalia, Rwanda in 10, 15, 20 years, just because we can't sort out our politics. That's why I'm advising those who are clinging to power, who think Ruto must be president so that they become the one. I invite them to look at this country in terms of their children and their grandchildren. We need a good country to leave to our children. But I want also to jog you a bit. You think you lose some little power, but believe me, time is fast running out. And if these negotiations are not held, leave alone questioning why they should be held. I'm warning those who are standing in the way of negotiations. If they are not held, they will be held in circumstances where the best any of these people will get out will be Nusu MKATE. Watch. Either you talk now and sort out this little mess, or you wait, and the wait will produce the Nusu MKATE government that the country seems right against. The country is against handshake. The mood in the country is against coalition government. The mood in the country is against Nusu MKATE. But the same country is behaving in a manner to suggest that's what they want. Because if we don't sit down today, sort out the minor issues we have, that will see Ruto remain president with full powers, we are forcing ourselves into what we are saying we don't want, which is Nusu MKATE government.